We've rapidly developed the most expansive and accurate testing system anywhere in the world and have completed more than 3.3 million tests. To date, we have authorized 48 separate coronavirus tests, and the FDA is working with 300 companies and labs to widen our capacity.
So this is a very critical thing here. President Trump touting the progress made on testing, but a lot of health officials warn we still need to make testing more widely available. This is the key now to reopening things. Dr. Mark Siegel now, Fox News medical correspondent. How you doing, doctor? I understand you've got some new news today from the CDC. What did they tell you about testing?
Bill, I interviewed Dr. Redfield of CDC yesterday, and he told me that they're going to start expanding these surveys around the country to 10 different states using blood centers where you go to give blood donation centers, 20 of them in 10 states, to figure out what the penetrance is into the community. In other words, how many people have antibodies and how many don't. Up until now, we've been talking mostly about the tests you do this way. And President Trump was, when he says 3 million have been tested, he's talking about diagnostic tests. But now we're moving into the idea of surveillance. Who had it? Who's over it? Potentially, who's immune to it? But the problem, Bill, is that 90 different companies are asking FDA for emergency approval for their test, and we don't know how accurate some of them are, and we still don't know whether they prove immunity or not. All they prove is that you've been exposed to COVID-19, which is extremely useful information.
You raise a lot of good points there. What about the Abbott Lab test that you had the other night on Tucker? You get the results back in 5 to 13 minutes. Can that be produced on a mass scale, sir?
Yes, and Abbott is reporting that they're going to be gearing up to that. Abbott is also going to be doing an antibody test, but Abbott is definitely going to be gearing up to be doing millions of those tests instead of 55,000 a day, which is all they can do now. That's going to be expanded. That's the wave of the future in terms of diagnosis. There's no doubt that point of care is the way to go rather than waiting for your result, having to have it transported to a lab. If you can do it right in the doctor's office, right in the clinic, right in the hospital, and we can see who has COVID-19 and we have to isolate that person versus who doesn't have it, who can go home. It's a pretty accurate test, according to Dr. Redfield of CDC, that, again, I spoke to yesterday.
Yeah, it just seems like we're waiting on this stuff and waiting on this stuff. Now, we talked to a professor from Rutgers University yesterday. They've got this saliva test where you can drive through in Edison, New Jersey. Have you looked into that? Does that show much promise on a mass scale, doctor?
I like that a lot, Bill. He can do hundreds of thousands of tests down there in New Jersey. What I like about that test is it's self-administered. But the test you saw me do on TV the other night with a nasal swab could be self-administered too. The key to saliva or a nasal swab is, can I self-administer this test so that a healthcare provider doesn't have to suit up? We're having such shortages of personal protective equipment that self-administering is the way to go. What I don't know about the New Jersey test, I think it's phenomenal. I don't know how quickly that can be expanded around the country. That site, that human genomics site at Rutgers, can do hundreds of thousands of tests. They can probably do 100,000 tests a week. Again, that's still not enough. I want to give you an idea of the scale I'm talking about here, Bill. President says 3 million tests. 3 million tests. We diagnosed 650,000 patients with 3 million tests. Well, if we did 50 million tests or 100 million tests, imagine how many cases of lowly symptomatic or asymptomatic patients we're missing. I'm suspecting that there's well over 1 million, even over 2 million people in the United States that have COVID-19. I want to know who they are. That's how we figure out how to reopen society, who actually has this.
Yeah, understood. So it's mid-April. I mean, how can you forecast at what point we're up to speed or up to scale that would be appropriate for the medical community?
Well, Abbott says that they can get their antibody tests at the rate out of about 4 million tests in April, 20 million by June. If the FDA approves, let's say, 10 different antibody tests, you know, I'd like to see to the point where we can be doing 50 million tests a month of antibodies, people who have antibodies. That's up to speed. That's where we can really make a determination. If this outbreak or this pandemic decreases over the warm months and then comes back in the fall, I guarantee you we're going to be ready by the fall. There's no question that we're going to have this in place by June or July.
Okay,
I don't have the same optimism that we're going to get it in place by May. I don't have that optimism.
Wow.
That we can expand all the way up to here by May.
I don't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I have 15 seconds left. Do we need a national Manhattan Project or the equivalent of that, doctor, to get this done?
Wow, Bill. Yes. I want this to be the #1 priority. We allocated $2.2 trillion already. Let's see a lot of that go to get this testing up here now. May, not July. Absolutely. Mandate.
Be a big challenge. We could do it. Put it out there. Thank you, Mark
Manhattan
Siegel.
Project.
Nice to see you, sir. Thank you for this afternoon.